A tough week for the markets.
Oh man, brutal, right?
Right. I saw Hbar drop to like 12.6, 0.126. Crazy.
Right.
Awesome. We have Glenn.
All right. And it looks like
Hello, Glenn.
there we go. I had to mute that. I had the live stream going in another window there. Get Braden in here, getting some folks trickling in. Dr. Dark, my man, welcome.
Hello, sir. I got a half hour today, so I thought I would jump on and chat.
All right, appreciate it. All right, so I'll go ahead and kick this puppy off. Welcome everybody to the fourth episode of the DLT Sandwich, where we're getting into some Hbar news. We do token giveaways every week and a little bit of choose your own adventure topics. I don't believe that doesn't look like we'll be joined by Brandon the Hbar Bull this week or next week. He's got some obligations that he's got to fill, so unfortunately we won't be joined by the wonderfully dapper and informed Brandon the Hbar Bull this week, but I am joined by some Hbar OGs and Hbar Foundry members, Tim, Glenn, Dr. Dark, and Phil. Phil from a local Savannah guy. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you having here. So my name is Jeremy Fletcher. I am the CEO and co-founder of a little software company called Ledgerama. We built the wallet Wallawallet. It was released in December of 2020, or no, late November, early December of 2020. We've been kicking for a year and almost a year and a half now in the Hbar space, and happy to bring you this weekly episode of the DLT Sandwich, where we kind of take a layered approach. We give you a little bit of market news, a little bit of Hbar news, and then kind of a little bit of whatever we want to talk about. So without any further delay in that regard, I'll get into a little bit on the market Mondays. Feeling a little bit of the blues this week. So I think everybody, this is one of those weeks that good opportunity, perhaps, but if you're a long-term holder, may not be feeling the best, might be feeling a little bit nauseous today. Total market cap for the week on the 7-day, going from 1.74 trillion down to 1.5 trillion, down 14%. Bitcoin down 16%, and old Hbar chugging right along there, down 14%. So past few weeks, we had seen Hbar doing a more drastic contraction than the other tokens. This week, a little bit less, but it's kind of right there in the neighborhood. So Dr. Dark, if you don't mind, you got any comments on the market as we're experiencing it currently? What are your thoughts?
I mean, obviously, it's a bloodbath everywhere. This is not, if you've been in crypto for a while, this will seem a lot like 2017, 2018 kind of crash. I'm far less, let's say, stressed about it than I was sort of the first time going through it, like 4 years ago.
Right.
Bitcoin 4 years ago, right, the peaked 18K, and the absolute minimum was like 3.8. So I think we still have a little bit to go for like a single day kind of dip, but I think I'm personally starting to kind of slowly kind of buy back in, but I think we have another 6 months, a year, with just general global economic circumstances where things are going to be pretty bad. But this is a time where interesting people who are serious in the industry are building things and promoting things, and you get kind of less like hypesters and scammers. So it's the kind of time I like from an investing perspective, but it obviously hurts everyone when you look at your portfolio.
Right. So just a quick aside, as we always have to state, none of this is to be taken as an investment advice, right? We're just a bunch of folks getting together on YouTube to share our opinions. They're educated opinions, but that's not investment advice. Do your own research. Dr. Dark, I don't know if the community's familiar with you generally. Is there any? Can you introduce yourself just a little bit and say a little bit about your background and what you're into?
Yeah. So I met Jeremy through the Hbar Foundation. I was kind of an Hbar OG. I saw the white paper in 2016 while I was doing my PhD in computer engineering. Obviously, like a lot of people who like Hedera, the algorithm was very intriguing to me about how it solved the blockchain trilemma. I'm currently working at an investment bank in Canada in the kind of blockchain space, but obviously I'm here just as my own personal views, and nothing that I'm going to say is reflective of the bank I work for.
Right, of course. And just to be clear, it's actually the Hbar Foundry. I don't want there to be any confusion. So there's the Hbar Found. No, that's all right. I just don't want the foundation going, hey, you're not with us. We are.
Yes, I have no affiliation with the Hbar Foundation. That's correct.
Right,
sorry about that.
Right.
So I also,
yeah, go ahead, Tim.
I also feel like the exchanges that we have, they are kind of playing a role in the prices plummeting. Like in the case of Bitcoin, like for example, if I go ahead and buy 1 Bitcoin and store it in the exchanges, and I don't withdraw it to my cold wallet or just move it out of the exchanges, I believe these guys take a fraction of that and lend it to others. And of course, when you log in into your exchange wallet, it just indicates that you have your 1 Bitcoin, but they kind of inflate the supply through these creating fractions. And when you increase supply, definitely the prices will plummet. I feel like this could be a reason. I really wonder what would happen if everybody could withdraw their Bitcoin or whatever currency that they have, cryptocurrencies that they have in these exchanges, if they would have the enough to give to everybody, or it's going to be like the classical bank runs.
That would be interesting. I really don't have a whole lot of insight into how the exchanges operate in that regard, and doing fractional lending kind of stuff. Dr. Dark, you got any insights on the exchanges that way?
I mean, I would suspect that many of them don't have enough on hand. I don't have any really like proper evidence for that. But obviously, a lot of these exchanges are, let's say, less than credible. I'd say the blue chip ones probably that are regulated are probably doing fine. I know the Monero community was organizing a while ago. I'm not sure if it happened or not. They were trying to organize a day where everyone took their Monero out of exchanges, because Monero being one where you can't track down what the wallet was for the exchange and kind of keep track. So people kind of know what the Binance exchange address is for Bitcoin and what the Bitfinex exchange address is for Bitcoin. You can kind of take a look. With XMR, there's no way to know. So the only way to kind of check is to sort of do a bank run and see what happens. But I didn't follow up with that if they actually ended up doing it or what happened. I assume if they did it and it went poorly, I would have heard about it. So that's maybe a good sign.
Right.
But yeah, I suspect there's shenanigans going on behind the scenes for many exchanges, and that's all the case. That's growing pains. Things are getting more regulated, not regulated. This will be less of a problem going forward.
Right. Yep. It's it's a growing technology. Like you said, growing pains are definitely to be expected. Phil, welcome to the DLT sandwich. Thanks for joining us. So Phil is new to the Hbar Foundry panel and to the DLT sandwich. So tradition has it in the Hbar Foundry that and I realize this is a DLT sandwich episode, but we'll fall back to the Hbar Foundry traditions and ask you to briefly introduce yourself and say just a little bit about how you got into Hashgraph Technology.
I live in Savannah. I guess my involvement began, I worked at Gulfstream here and was fascinated with the idea of blockchain as it applied to the supply chain. There was never any corresponding interest on Gulfstream's part, but I found it interesting. And I really started, I guess, I want to say 2017, 2018, the Buterin, the Ethereum founder, I began listening to a lot of his stuff. Worked with technology since the early 80s, and most recently have veered off into a little bit of smart contracts. And I'm fascinated actually by the whole Hedera thing, because it seems like they seem ready to answer a lot of what are apparent problems and questions in the whole space. I also followed Jim Nasser a little bit and set in on some things that he's done. But the other thing that you and I talked about the other day, just in passing, was how the founders are willing to move it into, everybody talks about DAOs, but it sounds to me like they're actually doing it. That's one of the few examples that I know of that really resilient organization has actually taken the step. So the whole thing is fascinating to me. Not to mention the fact that there are some capabilities that match up with the application I was talking to you the other day about, the kind of the private medical environment. And it also has touch points to Solidity and some other things that I've been messing with. So all around fascinated.
So how did you hear about Hedera Hashgraph in the first place? What was it that clued you in? Was it the Savannah meetups, or was it something else?
I probably heard about it concurrent with the Savannah meetups, actually.
Okay. All right. Yeah. For a lot of folks, the technology, the kind of technology ecosystem, our local neighborhood here in Savannah is pretty familiar with Hedera at this point, because Savannah is a fairly small community. The tech community is pretty small, and I've been a vocal verbal proponent of Hashgraph technology since pretty early on. So I think folks in the Savannah area kind of at this point, a lot of them kind of roll their eyes. Oh yeah, we've heard of Hedera, we've heard the story, but it's intriguing, so I stay up on it.
Yeah, it is.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Phil. Glenn,
Yeah,
good to have you too. So I'm going to jump into a little bit of the Hbar news here. Some of the stuff that I was looking at looks like MTech. So for folks out there that might not be familiar with MTech, MTech is a company that's working on central bank digital currency solutions in the Hashgraph space. And looks like that they are in collaboration with something called Haiti Pay, and will be showcasing their HTS-based CBDC at the Embassy of Haiti. Paving the way for digital remittances, local bill pay, and financial inclusion built on Hedera Hashgraph. So MTech has got some interesting relationships. They are engaged with the Central Bank of the Bahamas. They're also engaged with the Bank of Ghana and the Central Bank of Nigeria. So MTech doing some interesting stuff in the CBD space. CBD space, not something that I'm generally all that intrigued by. I feel like DLT, a lot of the point of DLT is to kind of get away from these centralized institutions. But it would certainly be it would be interesting to see Hashgraph technology being utilized in a CBDC use case, just kind of as a general stamp of approval and not approval. What's the word that I'm looking for? Basically a test pilot. It would be an interesting test pilot, and certainly would get a lot of recognition onto the technology. They got an interesting team. So let's see, the Chief Risk and Policy Officer, DR Maurice, 35 career in the public sector, including work at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York and the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco. Also most recently at the US Treasury. Their Executive Director of Strategy and Business Development. David Abramovitz, who came from the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, so the SEC, in both the market regulation and enforcement divisions. Also worked as an analyst and salesperson for two of the largest sell-side investment banking firms. So pretty deep bench there as far as the MTech team goes. So seeing them doing something with Haiti, looks like they're doing a demo of their HTS-based CBDC at the Embassy of Haiti in Washington, D.C. So pretty cool there. And then also in a similar vein, so we've got two things coming up we had two things come up for ESG, which is environment, societal or social? Societal, I believe. Social and governance, right. Toko from DLA Piper working with ServiceNow. So that's pretty huge. People don't really think about ServiceNow and SLAs and workflows, but those are pretty huge. So just a little bit of news for Toko. Of course, Toko is a product from DLA Piper. DLA Piper is one of the Hedera Governing Council members, as is ServiceNow. And so this is kind of, we're starting to see evidence of these enterprise use cases on Hedera coming out of the woodworks. Token automation solution based on the ServiceNow platform and the Toko tokenization engine, both wired in the Hedera DLT. Application is currently being used at DLA Piper to track SLA service level agreements, real-time tokenized budgets between departments, legal entities, and external vendors, and is critical for the next generation of ESG digital assets. So again, kind of this tokenize everything, tokenizing things like carbon credits and things are big in the ESG space. And this minimum viable product is the first initiative in which DLA Piper and ServiceNow Both Hedera Governing Council members are joining forces to build a DLT-based solution that expands the power of digital workflows within and across organizations. So pretty cool. There's also some stuff going on in the ESG space from a company called Miko, but we'll get into that in a second. Any comments out there on this kind of collaborative effort between DLA Piper and ServiceNow?
This is definitely something that's kind of not sexy, you know, in the Web3 world.
Sure.
You know, I had not worked for too many kind of large corporations. I didn't know much about ServiceNow, but some of the people I talked to who have been working in kind of corporate for a long time, you know, they know ServiceNow, right? Like this is integrated, and I forget the number, but it's a large percentage of sort of the global, you know, regional Fortune 500, let's say, for each region. It's kind of hard to say how many TPS it's going to actually end up at, but you know, this is very kind of positive news, and it kind of goes to the thesis that, you know, all the markets are down, but you know, these real plays that are really going to affect kind of how we do things, like they don't shift their directions based on a 20%, 50% move in the market, right? These are multi-year / decade like plays that are, the foundations are being laid right now, and you know, this is the time to kind of spot things for when people aren't paying attention.
Right. Yeah. ServiceNow. So before my life in cryptocurrency, I worked for one of the largest telecom providers in the world, and they use ServiceNow. So, you know, ServiceNow is something, like you said, it is well known in the enterprise and corporate space. And then also, so we had, and then Brandon, the Hbar Bull, had a really interesting interview with the folks from Miko, and also Rob Allen, of course, one of the, he's with the Hbar Foundation. Was formerly with FPOS, the payment solution provider in Australia. They had a really interesting interview. So the kind of the tagline for Miko, for folks that aren't familiar with that, with their company, also based out of Australia, Miko gives people and organizations the tools to access, control, and create mutual value from personal data. Right. So kind of they're in, you know, in the privacy space. We had a little bit of conversation about some of the privacy stuff last week, and kind of tends to pop up. There was recently the Hbar Foundation set up the Privacy Fund, which is being led by somebody mentioned a little bit earlier in the call, Jim Nasser is spearheading this the Privacy Fund through the Hbar Foundation. So a lot of stuff, a lot of cool stuff coming out on privacy. So basically, they want to go from centralized and federated models to decentralized ecosystems, seeking to put people in control of their identity and data. Miko's approach is to marry government, financial services, and telecommunications, and the emerging personal data ecosystem that allows people to participate directly in the value chain via an API of me. So chains of trust. So they've got this trustery, it's kind of like treasury, but trustery product that they're working on, chains of trust. Basically, they want to prove, so something like if we're getting into this world of tokenize everything, and if we want to tokenize a tree that was planted on some, you know, some obscure part of the planet, well, that actually has a physical location. It's got a latitude, longitude. There is a spot where that tree is, and they want to be able to prove the provenance. So they're working with some geolocation-based NFTs. Some of the stuff that Wallawallet and the Ledgerama team also interested in working on. We're also working on some of these geolocation NFT proofs of concept. So exciting to see Miko also working on geolocation stuff. Look forward to reaching out to them and getting a little bit more information about what they're doing and seeing if there's any potential for collaborative relationships there. But basically, they're working on chains of trust. Where did the tokenized asset originate from? They want to be able to verify the legitimacy of a token's origins without revealing the actual location, unless you possess the proper roles and authority. So this kind of gets into the zero knowledge ideas, where essentially we can prove something. We can prove that we know something or have a secret about something, or something about our personal, something personally identifiable, or geolocation data. Basically, we want to be able to prove something like, if we planted a tree at a particular geolocation, I want to be able to prove that I did in fact plant this tree at this geolocation without revealing where it's actually located, right? Because we get into some privacy concerns and security of facilities and things like that. So we want to be able to prove that we're doing something geolocation based without actually revealing where the location is. Pretty cool. And they are working around something that I'm just kind of becoming more familiar with, this Guardian, which is a modular open source solution that includes best-in-class identity management and decentralized ledger technology, DLT, libraries, and at the heart of Guardian solution is a sophisticated policy workflow engine that enables applications to offer requirements-based tokenization implementation. That's the Guardian. Dr. Dark, I'm sure I saw you nodding over there.
Yeah.
You're probably at least somewhat familiar with the Guardian. Can you give us a little bit of insight and intel into that?
Yeah, I'm pretty familiar with it. It's being used a lot of places right now in the ESG kind of carbon space, although it's a much broader kind of framework than that. It sort of sits above the blockchain layer to allow you to define sort of, who are the actors and what do they have to attest to for you to be comfortable with some process being finished. So in the case of like the carbon space, might be who are the people who are checking that you planted the trees, who are the standards bodies who are saying what kind of science you're using to determine how much carbon you captured. There might be competing standards and your project has to attest that I'm using standard A, B, or C. It might be, the exchanges who are buying and selling the tokens. Like you set up what your flow is and who's going to have keys. And in the traditional Hedera style, that can be a very complicated set of who gets to sign off where. But then eventually it's going to flow back down into sort of IoT devices that actually measure, carbon in the soil, or sort of elastic bands you put around trees that as they expand kind of have a different signal that tells you how much the tree's grown. It was a while where I thought that Guardian was meant for the ESG space, but they're really trying to pivoting a little bit to be doing that, but also just kind of broader kind of policy workflows. And so I think, this is a great example of that on the people that are using it. And you're starting to see more projects. I think the ESG fund is going to really promote trying to use this. I think there's a bunch of other kind of use cases for just, again, trust and kind of tracking that a certain set of procedures has been followed in a way that's kind of auditable, and you can kind of take it to the bank, as they say, to a court or whatever, saying that all these things we said would happen, and when trust fails, you can see exactly kind of where it is. So I think it's still considered kind of a middleware layer. Like you really need kind of more developers coming on top, making an easier interface to it as like a protocol level. And Trustery, that's one of the things they were trying to do, is sort of make visualizations and GUIs for how this data has been flowing around. But I think Guardian is really like a front runner right now in the ESG space for sort of the global source of truth for carbon. There's some other ones, Climate Warehouse, and a few others that are competing in this space. But I think it'll get used for a lot more on top of that.
So do you have any, I didn't do too much deep diving, but do you have any insight into into who's on the team? Like who is behind Guardian?
There's a thing called the Interworks Alliance. So this is, it's really being like spearheaded by Microsoft. Like I think they're putting kind of the most money, the most resources, the most kind of manpower on it. But it's got, I don't know, a dozen pretty big names that are all interested in the voluntary carbon market, kind of primarily. And they're really helping trying to spec out very specifically what's needed in the carbon space. But in the act of doing that, they've sort of created this general thing that turns out can be used for a lot of other things. So they're starting to kind of add more collaborators that are in other domains. But the Interworks Alliance is, they are the premier sort of, what's the word for this, industry group, let's say, that's really thinking about carbon and really at like a deep level, like what are absolute at the granular level, what do you need in the token, who needs to be signing what and when, how do you decentralize it, what are all these pieces, and they're like kind of very forward looking. It's a famous statement by one of the heads of the Interwork Alliance. He works at Microsoft, that there's not enough verified carbon credits in the world just to meet Microsoft's demand for them to go carbon free, right? So not that there aren't enough carbon credits, there's not enough verified carbon credits, right? And obviously from a PR perspective, you can't be buying a whole bunch of credits that turn out to be fraudulent later. That can cost more money in brand value than you get in saying that you're green. So there really is a push to try to get as much verification piece by piece kind of put in. But the Interworks Alliance, they've been scoping this out from what would the whole end system look like if we had everything done perfectly. And then what people are doing now is coming in and trying to plug in the little piece that they could add, whether that's verification or IoT sensors or the validation verification bodies like Vera, kind of trying to get them to start signing transactions. This is where the space is going. And there'll be a component for a lot of DLT for storage, for storing documents. I think Dobu's doing this, right? If you take satellite photos, you want to put that on chain and you want to attest to it and get a hash, signed off on HDS. This whole process is gonna have to become more monitored in the way that in any other kind of investment, you know, if you're building $100 million for some carbon project, you need kind of real-time feedback, or at least semi-regular feedback what's happening. And this would happen in any other kind of investment type that's not been happening in carbon for some reason. And Guardian's the kind of play to make that interoperable all over the world. And in my view, that kind of solution is the only one that'll make the scale to hit the global climate target. You know, Verra, which is the biggest and most trusted kind of verifier, if they have to verify your project, that's a good project, and institutions will be happy to buy it, but they can't verify all the projects in the world, right? And we need to scale this up by 1,000x, you know, in the next 15 years. And that's going to have to be with lots of individual people and lots of individual places, you know, growing the carbon, verifying the carbon, doing the measurements, you know, doing the sensors, et cetera. It can't be, one organization is not going to, no one central organization is not going to scale to what we need to hit anywhere near the climate targets for 2050.
Right, and then not only just, and it's not just about the carbon, it's about all these other, you know, all these other elements. I mean, you take into account the water in an ecosystem. I mean, it's, you know, there's the quality of the air. I mean, it just goes on and on. The, you know, the intricacies of monitoring these ecosystems, because obviously, you know, these sustainability measures aren't just about carbon. That's the primary focus, but it's a pretty vast and complex system. So you're going to need something that's pretty performant to tackle it. So with the Interworks Alliance, I'm guessing that they probably have their fingers or their eyes and ears in a number of different platforms. But this, from what I could see, it looked like the Guardian was, looks like the Guardian is Hedera centric. Is this, do you know, is Guardian a kind of a Hedera flavored branch of this Interworks Alliance or project of this Interworks Alliance?
As far as I'm aware, it's just on Hedera at the moment, because there really wasn't anything else that has the kind of the features that they need. So forget about the speed. Like, this will end up being a lot of transactions in the future, but I think there's other chains that will be kind of fast enough. But as many people who like this space kind of know, you know, Lehman built a lot of kind of very nuanced and granular features into how things can be signed, and, you know, just the way you set up the regulatory kind of systems that are possible on Hedera, and maybe a few other platforms, but not many. But as far as I'm aware, Guardian is all in right now. You know, on Hedera, that might change in the future, but certainly they're giving it the first go on Hedera.
That's great. And you mentioned Microsoft's involvement in the Interworks Alliance. So it gives me, you know, it's a good indicator, I think, that Microsoft is at least aware of Hedera technology and quite possibly looking at what the relationship with Hedera might look for Microsoft going forward. So that's pretty cool news. All right, so that brings us about to the half hour here. So I'm going to open it up. If there's if Phil, Glenn, or Tim, if you guys have any local or product news, anything that you want to share with us before we get ready to sign off, please, by all means, now is the time to choose your own adventure and go with it.
Yeah, sure. Speaking of verifiable emission reductions, we recently, I'm so super excited to see how this is going to play out in the future. For Tamua, Tamua, they actually making environmentally friendly biomass fuels from sugarcane waste. But recently they have launched a platform where they can help track these like carbon offsetting, sync.io. I'm sure you guys have seen these. It's been all over the news, on LinkedIn, on the YouTube, and everything else. It's really, it's going to be really interesting to see how it's going to play out.
What's the name of the project? Tamua?
Tamua is the company, but the platform is called Sync, not SCYNK.io.
Okay.
Sync, yeah.
And the company is that TA. Can you spell that out for me? The company, so the audience can get it.
TAMUWA. Tamua.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right.
It's a kind of it's a Swahili word. I have a feeling it's derived from the word tamu. Tamu means sweet or delicious.
Okay.
But since they get their waste products from sugarcane, it's quite interesting.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see. I'm going to check and see if I got word on our Hbar giveaway winner here. Let's see. See if I can find this. So we, every Monday we're giving away jam tokens. We're giving away 10,000 every week. And this week, the winner we have all in Hbar with diamond hands. So Twitter handle all_in_Hbar is our 10,000 jam token winner this week. So we'll be reaching out to you all in Hbar via Twitter. Really appreciate everybody's support out there. Stay tuned. We're going to continue to be giving away jam tokens every week. And as we get other projects that are interested in the DLT sandwich, I look forward to giving away other tokens as well. I'm sure once Inara is in a space where they have their own tokens, we'll be doing some promotions and giveaways here. Real quickly, and Dr. Dark, I know we're at the half hour here, so if you got to jump ship,
I'm gonna jump off.
Okay.
Nice talking to you.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. I hope you can do it again next week. We understand you're a busy fellow, but it's always great to have you, Dr. Dark. So look forward to seeing you again real soon.
Thanks. Talk to you guys later.
All right. Have a great week. Bye. Any product news on Hbar to share with us, Glenn? I know we're getting ever closer to open beta.
Yes. For those of you who are familiar with our payment solution provider Drop, and you may have seen the recent Forbes article by David Birch talking about blockchain, DLT, and micro payments. So we're getting ready to launch the open beta. It's imminent. We're looking at sometime this month. I'll have a firm date in the very near future. So the most exciting news coming out of that for us is that Drop recently received a Hbar Foundation grant. And what this grant allows is for Drop to front load every new Drop digital wallet with $5 for every new user. And that's every new Inara user, which is really exciting. When we launch our open beta, we're going to be able to offer to all new users, all new readers of Inara, when they install the Drop digital wallet, there will be $5 in that wallet, so they can just start reading. And my understanding is that it will not be required to add a credit card or ACH bank account to get started.
Very cool.
So it just drops that bar for entry to a really nice, low frictionless kind of thing. So yeah, we're excited about that. I think this is really huge for us in terms of adoption and getting people in the door to give us a try.
Absolutely. I love seeing that because, again, and as I've mentioned in previous episodes of the DLT sandwich, I mean, part of the reason that I'm doing this with the jam giveaways is just to get these tokens into people's hands so they can see how easy and fast it is to transact with the Hedera network. I mean, the lightning speed, the trust, it's asynchronous, Byzantine fault tolerant. I mean, so you've got the best of all these worlds. You've got an incredible governance model. And I think once people really get their hands on these things and start seeing how fast they can start moving these things around and how awesome it is to be able to build your own token, create that lasting digital impression with your community that your community can rally around. And as we've talked about, Glenn, that becomes the gateway of experience into these projects, books, art, social media, basically all of that is kind of wrapped up and focused into the token, which is this lasting digital impression. So we would just want to get them in people's hands because it's a powerful tool. I mean, the idea that people can kind of create their own valuation systems. I mean, people are just now starting to figure out what that means, right? I mean, that's what central banks have been doing for, 100+ years, is essentially they have a certain set of value assets, right? All these banks that have all these assets together, and then they create a token, which is, we call it the US dollar, right? And so now as technology increases and people, and the need for these middlemen gets reduced, and we can trust in the magic and the math magic of cryptography, It starts to disintermediate some of those old institutions and just creates a world of opportunity. So super excited to see it.
It's this kind of promotion really goes to what you're talking about, Jeremy, because the future success of digital ledger technology and networks like Hbar is going to be really predicated on bringing in new people, bringing in a lot of new people into the fold, and reducing that kind of apprehension that a lot of people do feel about blockchain and cryptocurrency. And to the extent that the use model becomes, if not something entirely familiar, at least something that is not scary.
Right.
Right. And if you can, like, for instance, in this case, you can come in and, with just a few minutes of your time, get started with Inara, find out it's not scary. It's, you can only pay for what you read, one page at a time. And when the page turns, the author earns. The bar of discovery is lowered. You don't have to buy the book or subscribe to a service. Just start reading, and there's money in your wallet. And you might discover also that if you have you could get a Hbar account, and you got Hbar, plug that in, start using Hbar. So it's and we're doing that now. So I just encourage everyone to go to inara.world, check out what we're doing. You can sign up for the open beta. There's plenty of places on the site to just drop in your name and your email address, and we'll contact you, and you'll be one of the first to get started.
Very cool. Yep. So I have, as Glenn, as we've talked about before, I have some seriously avid readers in my family, and I also have some aspiring, burgeoning authors. I have a relative that recently finished her first novel.
Oh, congratulations. That is awesome. I mean, that is a huge accomplishment. So many people dream of writing a novel or writing a book of some sort. They dream about it, they think about it. Gee, I really should write a book about this, that, right. and just, and people do get started, but then they don't finish it. But to actually complete a book is a big deal.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. So Inara is near and dear to my heart. And it's part of this larger movement to pay artists directly, right? If you are an author and you or a musician, and you're the established industries are well guarded, as and as you've kind of talked about before, Glenn. So the ability for authors to be able, now, of course, there's still going to be marketing efforts. There's still going to be all of the normal things that would go into a business for an author. But it really kind of puts the power in their hands and just cuts out, again, disintermediates and takes out a huge middleman that's gobbling up so much of the profits that the author should be entitled to.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And it's exciting for authors to be able to tell readers whether they're already in the fold, like through their email subscription list, or they can reach them through social media or however they're doing it, to be able to tell them that, here's my book on Inara, just start reading. You don't have to buy the book up front. You don't have to subscribe to a service, just start reading. And as the reader goes through that discovery process, page by page, the author is getting paid.
Very cool.
So it's all about, dropping that, lowering that bar of discovery and getting authors and readers to closer together and connecting.
Right. All right. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up the 4th episode of the DLT Sandwich. Again, my name is Jeremy Fletcher. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Ledgerama, the builders of Wallawallet. I've been joined by Tim Mungai, our main man in Kenya, Glenn McCready of Inara, and Phil Marnell, one of our local Savannah technologists and enthusiasts. So thanks for joining us, and we will see you folks next week. Look forward to seeing you everybody then. Oh, and before I go, I should throw out a quick moment of thanks to Andrew Antar and the folks over at Tune.fm for giving these awesome jam tokens for the promotion. If you liked what you saw, don't forget to subscribe and give us a like. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.